Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch, your own personal sales maven, here to offer you tips and strategies and techniques to master the conversation of sales. Today's episode is a part of the Mastering Excellence series, and if this is your first time listening to one of these, Mastering Excellence comes from my background in neurolinguistic programming, where we learn that there is a structure to excellence. And when you understand the structure of how somebody is achieving exceptional results in some area of their life or business, you can implement that same structure into your own area of life and business so that you can get exceptional results as well. Today's guest, I'm super excited, is Mandi Ellefson. And let me tell you a little bit about her. She transformed her life from battling $175,000 in debt to amassing a multi-million-dollar net worth before hitting 40. As the visionary behind Hands Off CEO, Mandi isn't just another success story. She's a lifeline for consulting agency owners drowning in the day-to-day. Her magic? Transforming million-dollar agencies into scalable enterprises with minimal CEO dependency. Mandi has propelled hundreds of agencies towards tens of millions in revenue by refining their offers and attracting premium clients willing to pay 50 to 600% higher fees, all within 90 days. As a former business exit advisor for Millionaire Exits with 20 billion in exits under their belt, she knows a thing or two about creating and executing an exit strategy. Her clients rave about adding 5 figures to their net profit monthly, skyrocketing sales, and stepping back from daily operations to focus on growth or prepare for sales. Behind her transformative consulting work, Mandi is a published author and the host of the Hands Off CEO podcast, sharing insights and strategies to triple your fees and profitability scale an exceptional consulting agency that grows without you. Mandi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikki.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I always like to give everybody a little bit of, well, first of all, what we're going to talk about. Mandi blew my mind when I met her recently. She was talking about success conditions that drive bigger results. And I was so interested in success conditions. That sounds like structure to me. So I'm so excited for you to share about that. But before we do, I always like to give the audience a little bit of background about like how we even got connected, which was kind of a fun story for me anyway. We got connected through Dan, who was on the podcast not too long ago. And he said, I think you guys should know each other.
Yeah, that was fun. I saw your podcast episode. Like he had shared it and I was on his list and he shared it. And Dan and I've known some years back in the mastermind we were in or something. And he had me on his podcast. I looked at your podcast. I'm like, this is really interesting. So we got connected through Dan, and that's how we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, I feel really honored that you want to come and share on this, because I know I shared with you that my audience is kind of all over the board as far as like where they are in their business. Some people are just starting out. Some people have these, great, big, huge agencies. And then others are kind of in the middle. And the fact that you were willing to come and share this, and that I think every single person listening is going to benefit, including me, of learning about these success conditions and what that structure is behind it. I just, again, want to give my gratitude for you saying yes to doing this.
Well, thank you for saying that, Nikki. And one of the things that I have noticed is that when the market is a little tighter and it's a little tougher, it's the smaller guys that tend to be more willing to adhere to the success conditions. And we'll be talking about that. But the smaller ones, they want it bad. Like, so I noticed that the companies are like, I want to get to our first million. They're like hustle to be able to do that. And they're willing to do whatever it takes. They just need to have a better system, a better process to do that. So we actually see really good results with these companies that are under $1 million, even sometimes as low as just a couple $100,000 a year, because they have a great expertise, because they're willing to just like submit to a process. It's one of the things that you talk about here. So like, I'll leave it back to you, but this is one of the things that I just love about, the scrappy earlier folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I will say, I feel like a lot of us feel like we fit there, right? The scrappier, earlier, like we'll do what it takes. We'll be flexible. I always say my favorite quote is, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. Like we gotta be flexible right now. And especially considering just kind of what's going on in the economy, how people are feeling about spending money, how every single lead into your business, it's so precious. And we need to really understand and maximize how can we turn those leads into prospects and how can we turn those prospects into paying clients. So kind of tell us a little bit, like outside of the bio, which your bio is fantastic and you are fantastic, what isn't covered yet that when you think about the way you work with clients, the business that you guys are in and the things that you find the most satisfying? I'm super interested to know, like,
Satisfying.
what do we not know about you yet?
Well, I guess we have to decide how deep we want to go on that, because there's the market forward message, and that's what people are aware of. They have a problem awareness around. So as we talk about that, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the deeper mechanisms that actually drive the results. And that's the part I don't talk about as much, except for when clients start to get deeper and deeper down working with us. And it's really where it really can go to almost like, well, not almost, it goes to a deep spiritual level, really. And this is not something I talk about very much at all, because it's not what people would say that they need or that what they want to buy. But the process that we take our clients through is a very deep emotional journey. They have no idea what they embark upon. And we just tell them it's going to be challenging, and you've got to be willing to do the work. And you're going to see such incredible transformations in the next 90 days in your business. And really, it changes your life too. That what happens is you go, when you step into a new person, really, you become a new level of business owner, a new level of strategist in your business, a new level of, you're just able to be effective in a way that you didn't even have access to. And one of my mentors has described it as being able to show up in a way, you become a person that is unrecognizable to yourself right now. Become a person who is unrecognizable to yourself. And that's some of the things that I find myself constantly leveling up. And because that's what's required. You know, I'm creating a $12 million company over the next 4 years, but that's where we're at. And we're on our way into that. And it requires me becoming a $12 million CEO.
That's right.
I've got to step into that. I can't have that until I step into that and I really embody that. So what we're doing is with our clients, if they want to have a $1 million company, we help them be able to step into a $1 million CEO. And what does that look like as far as the offers we're making? What do you want to be known for in the world? Like, that doesn't happen by chance. You have to be very intentional about, what do I want to be known for? Because when you start your company, you've got an expertise, you're going out and you're saying, you know, I've got this thing I can do well at. I'm going to go and find people who need that thing, and we'll sell that thing to them, that service or whatever. And then you grow your company, and then you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm not getting paid enough. This kind of sucks. You're also working more hours and you're hiring more people. And then you're finding you're making less and less money, even though you're working harder and harder. And you get to this point here. And a lot of times what happens is that they got to that point organically, a lot through referrals. It's just, they kind of have followed the breadcrumbs, which is exactly what you want to do. It actually is, it's a path of success, but it will stop you. And I've seen this stop me too, even being very intentional. Like, you get to a point where and we're actually in a reinvention stage right now too. And I think everyone is right now. There's so many changes that are happening right now.
Yeah.
But the opportunity here is to really be very intentional about who you actually want to be, and not from this perspective of like, maybe I can do that. Like, I kind of would like that, but it's not even knowing how to yet. You have to step into that, and then you figure it out as you go along. But otherwise you limit yourself, and then you really can't have true greatness.
Yeah. It reminds me of the saying, I think it's been said many times, is the, like, what got you here won't get you there, of like having to recognize that at some point there's some transformation that needs to happen. And also to really honor, I think, that transformation is change, and change is not comfortable. My NLP teacher used to always say, the only person who likes change is a wet baby. It's like, yeah, because change can feel so awkward and weird, and to take on a new level and you become a version of yourself that, like you said, it's unrecognizable, but it's almost hard to imagine because you don't know what's possible yet. So how could you possibly imagine what this new version of you would be unless you have somebody guiding you and like kind of helping you along the path? Because these are the things that we really do not do alone, I don't think.
I completely agree with you on that. And you can do it alone if you want to have a very limited vision.
Yeah.
But the problem is you can't see the next level there.
Yeah.
But someone else, like yourself, Nikki, with your clients, I'm sure you perform this very well, where you can see them in their next level. You can see a next level that they can't see for themselves. And this is like a visioning gift. And this is like, I see this as almost like a spiritual gift that you can actually see who this person really is. So this is not like them actually changing. It's actually them, yes, it's changing it, but the transformation, when you look back, you're actually saying, this is actually more of who I really am.
Yeah. It's like, I guess because I see this butterfly behind your head right now of like, you've got up on your, what am I trying? A shelf. That's what it's called. You've got the butterfly, but it's almost like you're growing into the butterfly wings. And once you grow in, you're like, yeah, these totally fit me and they feel right. But you didn't even know what it would feel like to have the wings until you start to grow into them and you realize like, oh, they were there all along. I just couldn't really feel them because I hadn't grown into them yet. I'm like way off topic here, but that's what I keep thinking about. It's just like you're growing into this version of yourself that is meant to be. It is who you are. And it's hard to do that without guidance. And just to be really candid, I want to say like sometimes you grow from a place of pain and being forced to change because something has happened. But also there's opportunity. Like I think most of us prefer to grow from a place of like, oh, I want expansion and I want to like do more. But there's also this like, I don't want this pain anymore. And so I'm willing to step into who am I really meant to be. So anyway.
There's so much that you just said there that is just gold. And I think many of us say, and I put myself in this category too. I just sat down the other day and recognized I'm like, I'm no different. But we oftentimes say that like, we don't want to go through the pain. We prefer to be able to just be able to shift and change because we really want to do that. But the reality is that what really drives the biggest transformation is the breakdowns that lead to the breakthrough. And the bigger the breakdowns, the bigger the breakthrough. So as much as it sucks that the market changes, we've had to reposition just a little bit. Some of our channels haven't worked as well as they have in the past. And we've just had to pivot.
Yeah.
And we've helped our clients pivot, which is fine. But it sucks in the moment. You're like, oh, like who moved my cheese kind of moment. That book.
Yes, I love that book.
But there's such incredible opportunities here. If we can be the resource for our clients, if we can actually be their solution to the biggest challenges right now. And back to what I was talking about with the breakdowns, in a down market, what we notice is, especially the earlier folks, what I was mentioning, like our market changes a little bit more. We start focusing on the earlier folks more in a down market because they're out there saying, I need to do better. I want to do better. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And they have big breakdowns of like, this isn't working. I need to make this work. So we could facilitate very big breakthroughs because they want it so bad. Whereas a big mistake that we see with some of the larger companies that I wouldn't even say that they're that large, but companies that are in the lower seven figures, what happens a lot of times in this place is they go and they find a hole to hide in, or maybe even to die in. And I know that sounds pretty rough, but I can look at the P&L cross the line for companies in our industry. And no matter what their numbers were, I can see there's a trend that matches. And I can tell if they match the trend, I know they didn't do anything but put their head in just wait and watch. Or maybe they invested in all the wrong things. Like it's a pattern. You can see it and it's going to happen again. The difference is that we have AI that's going to come in and make whatever they're doing even more commoditized. They don't have the same cash reserves that they may have had before to go through. They don't have also the availability of cheap capital that we had before, like it was just flowing out left and right that we're now paying the piper for right now with inflation. So I'm saying there's so many things that are they're up against, and the ones that go and stick their head in a hole, it's going to be rough when they decide they need to go and make a change.
Yeah.
We're being very intentional about who are the people they're sticking their head. We're going to still help them. We'll still give lots of great free content, but we're going to spend our time on the people who really want to go after it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that leads us really naturally to what we're talking about here, these success conditions to drive bigger results. Because again, when you started talking about these, when you and I met a couple weeks ago, I was like, dang, this is like, I want to know more about this. I want you to tell us, how would you define success conditions? And then we're actually like going to get into the structure behind it, but how do you describe it?
Okay, so let me give a little bit of context around that, because it's just kind of jumping in the middle before, like, we need to understand why success conditions even make any difference. So
Okay.
I'm going to talk about professional services firms, because that's our expertise. And one of the things that we see a lot of times is that they will basically, their business is based upon referrals. Someone gives them a referral, you can help them. Okay, you've got money. Okay, we'll accept you as a client, and we'll try to figure out how to help you. And it's a very custom process, and they're doing that over and over again when the companies are coming inbound, and they attempt to build systems around that, but it doesn't really work because they're all over the place. And this is a company they're trying to scale this way. You can imagine how difficult that is to even have a sales strategy around that, because what are you even offering?
Right.
All right. What do you even want to be known for? So what happens is that their results kind of follow a bell curve, where they have some outlier results that are like spectacular, and they did great work for them, but they don't really know why. You talk about the unconscious competence. They don't know why they were able to drive great results. Then they have people on the other side of the bell curve that were train wrecks. And they have a little bit better idea why that is, right? And then you have them that didn't do so well, or they just don't even know because they didn't collect that data, and because the clients were not giving them that information. They didn't even know how effective their services were at driving results.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they didn't even define results. They just did a service, right?
Yeah.
And then you have some that you have some on the other part of it that they did pretty good work. And those are their best clients, but they don't know how to. So really, like, their top 10% of their clients are their very best types of clients, but they don't know how to be able to replicate those results. And part of that is because they'll look at this and say, okay, well, this was a law office, so we'll just go after more law offices. So let's say they go a niche down on that, but you can go a niche down on that. That's a good start. But until you're getting clear about what is the intentional outcome we're creating for these lawyers, tell me if I'm going too detailed here.
No, I'm tracking.
So we'll create this outcome statement, and this is your stand of what you're creating for these law firms. So, for example, maybe that's that we're going to be able to help them accelerate their. I was going to say efficient. I was going back to a number of different ones. I'm kind of going through like 10 different offers in my head of different clients. So streamline their efficiencies and be able to cut 10 hours per week off of their admin team times 20. And that's like $500,000 of profit that they save. So like maybe their outcome statement is, we help lawyers be able to recapture $500,000 of profit in, 12 months or something like that.
Right.
Like,
okay.
So that's like the outcome.
Yeah.
Now, how do we be able to create that outcome every time? What are the success conditions that we have to have in place to be able to create that? Well, you're going to need to have metrics to be able to manage to metric. It is actually possible. So what happens is in your success conditions, you need to be putting these up front in your sales process so that you can sell them on. Part of our process is that we track the effectiveness of your campaigns so that we know how effective we're being, so that we can dial it in and actually accomplish this outcome. If you don't give us this, we can't actually stand by this promise. So that's an example of a success condition. Another success condition is that there might need to be a minimum budget. One of our success conditions is, when we're working together with clients, there's a certain upfront amount that is mandatory. We just cannot create this transformation without it. It's just, we just can't. I'm just not willing to do that because drag people through. Like, there needs to be a transformation there. And other success conditions might be that they're willing to follow the process. And so there's these different success conditions you might need. It might mean a minimum number of associates in the law firm. It might mean that you need an administrative person that's going to help you execute all this internally. You know what I'm saying? So you don't know what the success conditions are until you know what you're actually creating those conditions to create. So you have to start with the end in mind.
Okay. So just to like step to the side here and maybe kind of come back with you kind of to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying and also the audience too. So this idea of a success condition in the way that it is going to serve you and your business and your clients, most importantly, is that there are some metrics that when you understand how your top 10% or 20% of clients are getting exceptional results from the work that they're doing with you. And you can understand and kind of like pull out that data of like what had to exist in order for them to get these results. Now you can start to put structure so that when you bring on a new client, they either have to meet some criteria in order for them to achieve similar results, and or they have to be willing to follow your process that you know that when you follow this process step by step, you're going to have success.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
All right.
And it might be helpful for us to talk about how do you actually define the success conditions, right? So
Yeah.
I've decided to find like why it's important is that it drives predictable results every time. And when I say predictable results, I'm not talking about predictable results the way other people are thinking. I'm not talking about predictable deliverables. No. I'm talking about what your client actually intended to get out of the service that you wanted. So they may have signed on the dotted line with like the list of deliverables because that's what they had to do as part of their buying process.
Mm-hmm.
But what they really wanted is those deliverables to actually produce some business outcome. Maybe that is erased profitability. Maybe that's cutting their staff turnover in half, which generated a certain profit increase. They have something in the mind. And sometimes they don't even have something in the mind, but you need to plant that in their mind because that adds more value to your service.
So speaking to a client, a prospective client, when you have a concrete, like what is the goal? What are they looking to accomplish before they decide to hire you? And like for me, I love to work with clients who want to increase their conversion on consultations to 50% or more. So
Nice.
That's a concrete example. If somebody comes to me and is like, my conversion rate is 20%, there is a very, very high likelihood that when they implement the things I teach, we are going to increase their results. Now, it's easy for me to say to them when we track this at the end, what's your conversion rate now? And they say, my conversion rate is 75%. Well, then we more than exceeded their expectations. I kept to my promise, right, of what I was going to deliver by hiring me and working with me. And it comes back to, I need to know that up front as to whether or not I can deliver on that. But the only way I know if I can deliver on it is if they also take action too. So therefore, I have to have metrics and or requirements in place for them to, one, track results, because they can be like, well, I think I'm doing better, but like, how are you actually doing? Are you tracking this? Because if you're not tracking it, then we don't really know. It's like, how does it feel to you? Which, isn't probably going to keep them wanting to come back and spend more money. So am I hitting it?
Yes, you absolutely are. And I would take it a step further too. When you track the results on this, how much extra sales does that actually mean? So we could look at that and say, if you increase your sales conversion rate from 20 or 30% to 50%, and you have X amount of calls that are in place already, someone who has a solo person who has, maybe they have one call a week, the amount of result that they're going to get is very different than if you go and work with a team of 5 people that have 10 sales calls a week, right? So you could do the same work and you have infinitely higher upside and reward on the one of the team. Because, if you're looking at a team that let's just run the numbers here, 10 times, so 50, they're doing 50 calls per week, 50 calls for that. So it's 200 calls a month. And if you, at 200 calls per month, 20% on that would be 40 sales. Now, if you doubled that, even just getting it to 40, now you have 80 sales. Let's imagine those sales were $20,000 sales. If you have added 40 sales at $20,000 a month, how much did you just add there a month? 800,000 a month. Now, 800K a month. Now multiply that by 12 months. Now I like to be a little more conservative. So you just buy 10 months. You could generate $8 million for them over the course of a year. If you can hold them to the success conditions, and that's going to require helping them do things that they're uncomfortable doing. Like nobody wants to track their numbers. I don't either.
Yeah.
We don't like it. We avoid it. We avoid the responsibility of this. That's just what we do as humans. So being able to help your clients overcome that human element and actually help them see why, like you want to be able to add $8 million to your company the next year. We're going to help you do that. But like, we got to be able to stick to this. How important is it for you to get to 8 million? You know, when you talk with the CEO who's not holding their team accountable to do this, for example, how important is it for you to be able to add $8 million to your company next year?
Yeah.
And then that's how you get the buy-in.
And then you have an offer. If we're talking about bringing in another $800,000 a month to a business, and I know these are kind of some big numbers, probably for many of my listeners, but even if you say 8,000, right? 800,000 or 8,000, for some people, 8,000 would be a huge difference to their monthly, nut. And for others, that 800,000. And then what are they willing to spend, and how can you then price yourself accordingly? Because, it's like, how much money will you spend to make money? Right. Like, although I do feel like people sometimes get hung up on this, because if somebody said to me, if you spend $1 and you'll make $2, I will spend all the dollars to double that money all day long. Whereas most people will be like, oh, how many dollars will I spend to make $2? I don't know, like 20. It's like, what? No, like every dollar, if I can double my money, I will spend every dollar to double my money. Well, like that doesn't make sense otherwise. And so there is a little bit of a sales component to it, but you now can speak from a much more confident place when you understand that these success conditions, when they are in place, your clients are getting exceptional results. Success conditions drive bigger results. So that is the purpose of you understanding what are your success conditions in your business, so that you can speak from a place of confidence and you can price yourself accordingly, which, again, when I go back to your bio, like this is clients that are paying 50 to 600% higher fees when they go to
that. They're earning that.
They're earning that, right? Because now it's like, oh, I can charge more because I can speak from such a place of credibility as far as results.
Well, and let me give you an example of what that looks like too. And here's the thing is that for the people listening, like you're hearing these numbers and you're hearing these things, it sounds really big. I want you to hear this for yourself, because as you're thinking about you designing your own offers, what is a minimum result that you want to create for your clients? What is the minimum result? Do you want to be known for someone who adds $8 million to a company in a year? Do you want to be known as the one who adds $800,000 to a company a year? That's not bad either. That's pretty good, right? But what do you want to be known for? Not like, I do this X service, I do this bookkeeping, I do this this marketing agency stuff. We're the best at SEO. Like that is a service that's not necessarily getting to an outcome. And when we start selling outcomes and we start selling to the problem set that they actually have, and then positioning our services to say, well, under the right conditions, what could we do? And how do you find these conditions? You look at the worst examples and the best examples. The worst examples, you got like everybody, when you come up with, like, when I ask, like, what do the best ones have in common? What are the success conditions you can learn from the best ones? And they sit there stumped, like, I don't know. They sit there for a while and they're like, okay, what did the worst ones have in common? And then they're like, the list goes on, like, right? So that could be the easiest way to do it, is you start with like, what are all the ways that we could fail with this? And then you just reverse engineer for how do you be able to be successful? And that way you work with the very best clients, the ones that are fun to work with, that have budgets. And here's the other thing too, is that clients that say they don't have budgets, they find the budgets when you can actually show them a compelling vision. This is what I see for you. And I see that this is possible for you because you have this, this, and this in place, your success conditions, right? So if you're, but the requirement though is that we need a minimum of $50,000 to be able to do this. Like we can't do it for any less than that.
Right.
And what happens is that when we walk our clients through this, what I was talking about, them standing into just becoming a different person, when they actually see what's possible from their services, when you look at it from this angle, what happens is like one of our clients that are currently in our cohort right now, our irresistible offer cohort, she's like, she went without talking to any of us. She just went to her clients and said, and she doubled the prices to all of her clients and said, like, I simply cannot do it for any less than this because you know what? I'm choosing to offer exclusivity for our clients. That was her choice on this. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I can only have one in one market. So I have to charge twice as much for this. And it might even been more than that. It might have been, I think it was actually more than twice. And she's like, and the prices are going to be going up from here. She went and she sold it. This was before her offer was even done. We helped create this offer. Then she went and she doubled her prices. So she went from charging $15,000 to $30,000. And she was like, that was so easy. I think I need to add $5,000 more. So that's an example, like on the smaller scale, this isn't because she got better at sales. This is because she was more confident in what she did based upon understanding what we can really do. And we really pushed her to help her see a bigger vision for what she could create for her clients. And then when she understood what success conditions she had to have in place, now her sales conversations is qualifying and quantifying. Just like, do you have this in place? If you have this in place, what's possible? It's a different conversation. It's a completely different conversation.
Yeah. Because now we're helping people self-identify in or out, but also in your conversations, you're quickly able to identify, is this a right fit client? Because there's no reason to bring on clients that aren't going to get results because they don't follow the success conditions. So I love this so much. I also love your example of like, come up with your worst examples and your best examples as the place to start. So if you're starting there, you've got your best examples and your worst examples. What's the next step that you would advise somebody?
What I would look at is one thing is to really step into really being the leader here. And that's, when I started out with this example of how most professional services who won't even admit this, by the way, but a lot of, and I think we've all been there, right? Where we've had a prospect come to us and they weren't quite the right fit, but we kind of justified it in our mind that that we could work with them. It would be workable. And it's not necessarily always this unethical thing. It's just sometimes you just have like, you just brought on something that you're like, I wish I didn't do that. Right. But you still deliver on it, right? But
we've all kicked ourselves for, oh man, I should have turned that person away.
We've all done that. But one of the things is like, it's having the courage to be able to look at yourself and to be able to also just acknowledge that there's been times in the past that you brought on clients that you probably shouldn't have. And you brought on those clients because maybe the cash flow is lower. Maybe you overlooked some red flags that you won't overlook again. But it's having the integrity to say no.
Yeah.
And showing up in that energy in your sales conversation, in your marketing, that shows up as authority.
It does.
And having the integrity also, if a client joins your programs, like we just had one recently who joined our programs and like he was not adherent to our success conditions. And like, I could just already see we're going to be dragging him through this whole thing. We just refunded him the money and said, I don't think it's a good fit right now. Maybe this other thing's a better fit for you. We'll see where we come. But if we didn't do that, it would have impacted the rest of our whole cohort. And that is an integrity issue because we have made a promise to them that we're going to help them have this transformation. If we have one person in there who is not doing the work, who is resisting the process, and like it creates a negative drain on the whole group.
Yeah.
And we can't have that. So that kind of sucks because there's a big chunk of change that you go and refund, but like that's integrity, that's leadership. But it's so important though, to be able to do that, you got to be building your pipeline so you can feel confident doing that. That's the other piece there.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a next step as well.
Yeah. So being able to quickly identify this person is a good fit or not a good fit, and being willing to let go of the people who are going to drag you in the business and the group down if there's a group
Yeah.
component. I have been a part of groups where I always wondered, like, why is this person still allowed to participate? Like they're so disruptive, or they're just not, it just feels like the rest of us are doing all the work and this person is just like kind of riding the coattails of everybody else, which doesn't feel good to the other members. And I will say, I do look to the leader in that moment and go, like, this is your decision. So I don't know that I feel comfortable about your leadership, right? And I know I've been in a situation too where, I remember years ago where something happened and two people in the group reached out to me and said, "Hey, this thing happened and I'm not comfortable with it." And I was like, "Oh man, I missed the boat there with how I should have handled the situation." And so I had to remove somebody, right?
Right.
Because of that. And so there is this integrity piece. So I love that. And it can be hard, right? Especially when revenue is
Yeah.
tight and offering a refund is like, oh, it's so painful, but sometimes it's the better solution.
It's the better solution because you're making that decision from a place of abundance.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be creating the conditions in your business so you can operate from abundance as well.
Yeah.
But that's around sales and a lot of things that you're teaching around. But you're absolutely right. This is a deficiency in leadership, and that's one of the things that I look very carefully about is if I'm joining any kind of group, who is leading this?
Yeah.
I have been part of some masterminds that like lots of high level people, really fantastic people there, but how they were leading it, the culture that they were building, it created, in one case, like a very catty group. There were so many amazing women in this group, but all it took was about 5 of them to create really a terrible experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from that. I'm like, I would never want that to happen. So I looked at, with our retreats that we do, we have very tight success conditions for our retreats so that everyone has a really great experience. And part of that is we have ambassadors there that like are on the ground, making sure that there's not, that everyone's included, that everyone feels heard. And like the leaders of the group can't be the ones in there in all those conversations. You have to be able to plant. In our case, that's what we found works. Mm-hmm. But I'm just very careful about where I choose to spend my time around, is there good, solid leadership in that? And more often than not, there's not. And the reason why is because they're not willing to make those hard calls. They're not willing to say, like, so-and-so, I mean, before we had this online retreat that we had to do during COVID, which was just awful. I really hope we'll never have to do that again. It was a great retreat for like, is what we were able to do. But like, I would much rather do it in person, right? But that was a promise that we kept to our clients. There was one gentleman in there. He was just showing up very combative, and he would have been a real detractor in it. And it would have impacted the experience so negatively for everyone. And I had to just tell him, like, you know what, this isn't a fit. Let's discontinue our working relationship here. And he was pissed. He was really mad at me. And he actually did this gaslighting thing too. And I felt he really got under my skin. And I'm like, did I do the wrong thing here? And I really felt bad. But here's the funny thing about this is that about a year later, I ran into another company that he had worked with that he had actually recommended. And they were really a very smart, intelligent group. And they mentioned something to that effect. I didn't say anything, but they mentioned that like how hard he was to work with, and basically parroted the exact same thing that he said about me. And I'm like, okay, I see there's a pattern here.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to get down in the negative rabbit hole, but my point on this is that making hard calls it's hard. And you have to have the leadership to be able to take into account what you have actually committed to. Like what you're actually creating in your business, the culture that you're creating for your clients, the culture you're creating for your team internally too. We have a very hard, fast rule that if someone is rude to our team and like a prospect during the process, done immediately. We do it. Like if they're rude, they showed us who they are.
Yeah.
And if we violated it, you learn the hard way not to.
Yeah.
It's just
I have some of those rules with people and the way they treat my team too. So I get it. And okay, so I feel like for the sake of time, we're going to kind of bring this to a close, but this idea of success conditions, you've given us a few things to really think about, which is, that metrics really do matter in the business. And the more clear you are on them, the better results your clients are going to receive, the more confident you can go into your sales conversations, and frankly, the more you can charge. So I think
Yes.
those are all really exciting things. And to get started, be thinking about what are your worst examples, what are your best examples, and then stepping into that place of leadership. And what does that mean to you? And so this to me brings kind of full circle where we started talking in the beginning around this is not surprising now for me to hear you say that when people go through this process with you, they sometimes don't recognize themselves, because learning about your leadership style and where are those places where you stand in integrity and say, thanks, but no thanks, bless and release, may be a huge shift in your business that's needed in order for you to reach that next level in your business. So thank you so much for sharing this. I always like to ask a little bit about you as we're wrapping up. So my question to you, if I may, Mandi, is to ask you what brings you joy or pleasure right now?
Oh, lots of things.
Yeah.
I really, it brings me a lot of joy. With that client that I just mentioned who increased her fees from 15 to 30 and then now 35, that increased her net profits 700%. And that's life-changing for her as she's starting a family. And that brings me a lot of joy. I will say, going mountain biking with my husband brings me a lot of joy, going skiing, working with my clay and my pottery. I've got my pottery studio. I do pottery as well, which is fun. And spending time with my girls. I've got a 17-year-old about to graduate high school and a little sweet 13-year-old girl who just loves to play music and paint and sing and draw. Like, she's just so sweet. That brings me so much joy. Those are the things that bring me joy.
I love it. I love it. What's something exciting going on in your business right now?
We are in major reinvention mode, which is so exciting. And we are adding a lot more sales components than we have in the past around building sales teams, specifically starting with sales assistants and but you can just use your existing team right now and connecting with people earlier on to be able to add tons and tons of value. So we're teaching people about that, how to create executive briefings, how to fill those with your team, and really take this to a whole other level for how do we be able to, the theme of your podcast, mastering excellence. How do you master excellence on a whole next level as a company? And what that does is it allows you to elevate your profits, elevates the relevance of your offerings. It elevates your visibility and the way that you're seen as a leader in the market. So we're helping people be able to make those shifts and those transitions. It's going to help them really thrive and flourish through any market condition.
Which is important right now. So I love that.
Yes.
And then last, how can people listening connect with you? What is the best way to have some more Mandi in their life?
Well, you can reach out to me. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. So you can reach out on any of those channels. Mandi Ellefson, MandiEllefson. Kind of a mouthful. But if you go, probably the easiest way though is that we have a book summary for the Hands-Off CEO, and it's a scalability checklist that you can download if you go to handsoffceo.com/checklist. And it will give you the summary there. You'll be able to learn and get a little deeper dive on how to be able to create these type of offers that will allow you to be able to charge a higher price point, even in this market, especially in this market. It actually works better in this market because clients are so much more discerning and they're looking for just the right thing. So if you go there, you can get the book summary and that scalability checklist. And you can also just buy our book too at handsoffceo.com/book. $4.99 audio copy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I'm a fan and I love what you shared, and you have my brain spinning around ideas for my own business and my own leadership, my own worst and best examples, all of this. So thank you so much for being here.
It was such a pleasure, Nikki. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And for you, the listener, thank you for showing up, for continuing to listen to the podcast, for continuing to share, leave your reviews, reach out to me. I am super delighted to hear what your takeaways are from episodes. So keep doing that. Thank you so much. I am wishing you continued success in all that you're doing. Have a great rest of your day.